There are days when you wake up already tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the quiet weight you have been carrying for too long. You move through your morning routine as if nothing is wrong. You answer messages. You show up. You smile when required. And yet inside, something feels bruised. Not broken, just worn thin. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and felt completely alone in your struggle? Have you ever swallowed words because explaining your pain felt heavier than enduring it? Have you ever told yourself, "It's fine," when it clearly wasn't? And no one noticed. Life does not always wound us with dramatic tragedies. Sometimes it is the small, repeated disappointments, the silence after you hoped for understanding, the effort that goes unseen, the loyalty that is not returned. In the steady pressure to remain calm while storms gather inside your chest, you endure, you adapt, you keep going. But somewhere along the way, you begin to wonder how long you can continue like this. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from always being the strong one, the composed one, the reasonable one. You hold your reactions back. You think before you speak. You carry responsibility without complaint. And yet, who strengthens you? If strength means never breaking, then most of us have already failed. But what if strength is something quieter, something that does not shout or demand recognition? What if real strength is built in the moments when no one applauds you? In the decision to remain steady when your emotions are pulling you apart. In the choice to respond with dignity when you are misunderstood. In the discipline of your own thoughts when everything around you feels uncertain. Inner strength is not loud. It does not argue. It does not prove itself. It is built slowly, in silence, in reflection, in the private conversations you have with yourself when the world is asleep. It is the ability to sit with discomfort without being consumed by it, to feel anger without becoming cruel, to feel sorrow without losing direction. Maybe you are not weak. Maybe you are simply tired of fighting without knowing how to replenish your spirit. Maybe what you need is not escape, but grounding, not distraction, but clarity. There is a way to build that quiet core within you, a way to stand firm without hardening your heart, a way to endure without becoming numb. And it begins not with changing the world, but with understanding what within you can never be taken. Let us step gently into that understanding together. When someone hurts you, the first instinct is to believe it is personal, that it is about your worth, your inadequacy, your failure to be enough. The mind moves quickly in that direction. It searches for flaws within you, as if pain must be proof of deficiency. But if we slow down just a little and look more carefully, something quieter begins to reveal itself. Most people act from the limits of their own understanding. They speak from the level of awareness they have cultivated. They react from habits formed long before you entered their lives. When a person lashes out in anger, it often says more about the chaos inside them than about the target of their words. When someone dismisses your effort, it may reflect their own insecurity, their own fear of not measuring up. When a friend withdraws without explanation, and perhaps they are wrestling with burdens they do not know how to articulate, this does not excuse harmful behavior. It simply places it in context. A parent who criticizes constantly may believe they are protecting you from failure because that is how they were raised. A colleague who undermines you in a meeting may be driven by quiet competition, afraid that your competence threatens their position. A partner who becomes distant might not know how to communicate vulnerability, having learned that silence is safer than honesty. In each case, the behavior is real. The sting is real, but the source of that behavior is rooted in their perception of the world, not in an objective measurement of your value. We often forget that everyone lives inside their own interpretation of reality. Their fears shape what they see. Their past shapes what they expect. Their unresolved wounds shape how they respond. When they misjudge you, it is filtered through their own lens. When they accuse you unfairly, it is often because their inner narrative demands a villain to make sense of their discomfort. According to Stoic thought, what truly belongs to you is your judgment, your intention, your response. What belongs to others is their opinion, their reaction, their interpretation. The confusion begins when we treat their interpretation as if it were a verdict, as if their misunderstanding is a final declaration about who we are. Imagine a friend who forgets your birthday. You might feel invisible, unimportant, yet perhaps they are overwhelmed by work, distracted by financial stress, or consumed by their own private struggle. The event remains the same, but its meaning shifts depending on the story you attach to it. Or consider a harsh comment on social media. A stranger questions your character based on a few lines you wrote. Is that judgment an accurate reflection of your entire being, or merely a projection shaped by their limited glimpse and personal bias? When someone acts unkindly, they are revealing the condition of their own inner world in that moment. If their inner world is tense, they will speak tensely. If it is fearful, they will react defensively. If it is confused, they will behave inconsistently. Their action is an expression of where they stand within themselves. It is not a calibrated measurement of your worth. This understanding does not instantly erase pain. We are human. We are wired to connect, to seek affirmation, to feel the sting of rejection. But there is a quiet dignity in recognizing that another person's behavior is not a mirror held up to your value. It is a window into their current state of mind. And yet, even knowing this, even seeing clearly that their actions arise from their own perception, the ache does not always disappear. So if their behavior reflects their awareness, not your worth, why does it still hurt so deeply? Pity. It still hurts because you expected something different. Not perfection, not miracles, just fairness, just understanding, just a small confirmation that you matter. Expectation is quiet. It rarely announces itself. It settles into the heart slowly, built from shared moments, from promises implied but never spoken. You expect your friend to defend you when you are absent. You expect your partner to notice when you are not okay. You expect your family to understand the effort you have been making. These expectations feel reasonable, human, almost invisible. And when reality does not meet them, the pain is sharp. It is not only the action that wounds you, it is the collapse of the image you held, the version of them you believed in, the version of the relationship you trusted. Something fractures, not outside, inside. We suffer not only because someone acted poorly, but because we were attached to how they should have acted, attached to how things were supposed to unfold, attached to the feeling of being seen and affirmed. Attachment is subtle. It disguises itself as love, as loyalty, as hope. You hold on to the idea that if you give enough, understand enough, endure enough, others will eventually respond in kind. When they do not, the disappointment feels like betrayal. And beneath expectation, there is another layer, the desire to be acknowledged. Most of us do not crave applause. We crave recognition, to know that our effort was noticed, that our silence was understood, that our restraint was appreciated. When that recognition does not come, it can feel as though our inner world has been erased. You think, perhaps I am not important. Perhaps I gave too much. Perhaps I misread everything. The mind begins to construct explanations. Some are harsh. Some are self-blaming, because it is easier to accuse yourself than to sit with uncertainty. Stoic thought does not deny this pain. It does not ask you to become stone. It does not demand that you suppress the ache or pretend indifference. Emotion is part of being alive. To feel hurt is not weakness. It is evidence that you cared. But there is a difference between feeling and being led. A feeling rises. It tightens your chest. It colors your thoughts. That is natural. What happens next is where suffering deepens. The mind repeats the scene, replays the words, adds interpretation, builds a narrative around the event. The emotion, which began as a wave, becomes a current pulling you further out to sea. You begin to identify with the pain. You become the rejected one, the overlooked one, the misunderstood one, and once identity forms around the wound, it resists letting go. We hurt because we tied part of our stability to something outside our control. Another person's response, another person's validation, another person's consistency. When that external anchor shifts, our sense of security trembles. It is not the event alone. It is the meaning we assign to it, the future we imagined, the reassurance we silently depended on. There is also pride involved, a quiet pride. You believed your judgment about them was accurate. You believed the bond was solid. When their behavior contradicts that belief, it shakes your trust in yourself. The pain is not only emotional, it is existential. You question your perception, your intuition, your discernment, and so the suffering multiplies. Stoicism does not demand that you extinguish emotion. It asks something more refined, to see the emotion clearly, to acknowledge it without surrendering your direction to it, to allow sadness to pass through without allowing it to define you, to let anger inform you without letting it command you. This is not coldness. It is steadiness. In the stillness of night, when no one else is speaking, you can sometimes sense the difference. The feeling is there, heavy, real, but there is also a deeper layer beneath it, a quiet observer, a part of you that is aware of the pain but not identical to it. That space is small at first, almost fragile, yet it is there. And perhaps everything changes not when the pain disappears, but when you learn to remain present within it, without being carried away. Let us sit with that silence for a moment before we take a single practical step forward. Now we move into something practical, not dramatic, not complicated, just steady. Imagine you're in a meeting at work. You present an idea you have been refining for weeks. When you finish, a colleague responds with a dismissive tone. They interrupt. They question your competence in front of others. In that moment, your chest tightens. Heat rises. The instinct is immediate. Defend, argue, correct them publicly. A Stoic principle begins here, quietly. Separate what is within your control from what is not. Their tone is not yours to control. Their insecurity is not yours to manage. The only territory fully available to you is your response. You pause. You breathe once, slowly. You answer the substance of their question without matching their tone. Later, if clarification is needed, you address it privately. The calm is not weakness. It is ownership of your inner ground. Or consider a situation at home. A family member makes a comment that sounds ungrateful. You have been giving your time and energy for months. The comment feels unfair. The mind wants recognition. It wants apology. Yet another Stoic principle gently applies itself. Do not attach your peace to the outcome of another person's awareness. You can explain how you feel clearly and without accusation. You can adjust your boundaries if needed. But you do not wait for their validation to restore your balance. Your stability comes from knowing your intention was sincere. Whether they recognize it today or later does not determine your worth. There is also the practice of examining interpretation. Imagine a friend who has not replied to your message for 2 days. The mind begins to construct stories. Perhaps they are ignoring you. Perhaps the friendship matters less to them now. Instead of surrendering to that first interpretation, you pause and ask, what else could be true? They may be overwhelmed, distracted, dealing with something private. This small shift does not deny your feeling. It prevents the feeling from hardening into assumption. Another principle reveals itself in moments of public criticism. Someone leaves a harsh comment about your work online. The words feel sharp. Before reacting, you look at the content itself. Is there any truth hidden inside the tone? If there is, you quietly take the useful part and discard the rest. If there is not, you allow it to pass without internalizing it. You do not attempt to control their opinion. You refine your own standards instead. In each of these situations, the pattern is similar. The external event remains uncertain. The internal posture becomes deliberate. Stoic steadiness also includes preparing the mind for difficulty. When you leave home in the morning, you understand that not everyone you meet will be patient or fair. This expectation is not pessimism, it is realism. By anticipating imperfection, you are less surprised by it. When it arrives, you respond instead of reacting. The disturbance is smaller because you did not assume constant harmony. There is another quiet habit. At the end of the day, you review your responses without harshness. Where did you remain centered? Where did emotion lead you too quickly? This reflection is not self-criticism. It is adjustment. You refine your character gradually, the way a craftsman shapes wood with steady hands. What ties all these moments together is simple. You stop trying to manage the emotional weather of other people. You stop negotiating your peace in exchange for their approval. You return again and again to what belongs to you. Judgment, intention, action. Control of the inner world does not mean silence in the face of injustice. It means your action arises from clarity rather than agitation. It means you speak because it is right to speak, not because anger pushed you forward. Over time, something subtle changes. the same situations occur. Criticism still appears. Misunderstandings still happen. But your inner response grows more measured. The pause becomes natural. The breath becomes steady. You feel the emotion, yet it no longer governs the direction of your behavior. And in that space, there is relief. Not because the world has softened, but because you have stopped struggling to reshape it before shaping yourself. The heart feels lighter when it no longer carries the impossible task of controlling others. You walk through the same world, but with quieter footing. And that quiet, more than anything else, begins to feel like strength. There was a time when winning felt necessary. Winning the argument, winning the recognition, winning the silent competition no one openly admitted existed. It seemed important to prove something, to correct every misunderstanding, to respond to every slight, to ensure that no one walked away believing they had diminished you. But after enough years, after enough collisions with pride and disappointment, something begins to soften. You start to see that every attempt to win carries a cost. Even when you succeed, something inside remains restless. To win against another person often requires their defeat, their embarrassment, their silence, their retreat. And even if the outcome favors you, the mind stays entangled in the contest. You replay the exchange. You measure who said what. You wait for the next opportunity to secure your position again. The victory does not bring rest. It demands maintenance. Stoic maturity moves differently. It asks a quieter question. What exactly are you trying to protect? Reputation? Ego? A version of yourself that depends on comparison. When you look closely, many battles are not about truth or justice. They are about identity, about the fear of being seen as less. There is a difference between correcting what is wrong and competing for superiority. One arises from clarity, the other from insecurity. You can stand firm without turning the moment into a contest. You can disagree without needing the other person to concede. You can speak your perspective and leave the room without waiting for applause. This is not withdrawal. It is discernment. To win over someone else is temporary. They may concede today and resent tomorrow. They may change their tone in public and criticize in private. External victories are fragile because they rely on conditions you cannot fully govern. But to keep your mind steady in the middle of disagreement, that is different. When you do not need to dominate, your posture changes, your voice lowers, your breathing slows. You are no longer chasing validation. You are preserving alignment within yourself. And that alignment is not easily shaken. There is a quiet freedom in realizing that you do not have to correct every misconception. Not every false opinion requires your energy. Not every accusation requires defense. Sometimes silence is not surrender. It is strength, choosing where to stand. Peace of mind does not arrive when everyone agrees with you. It arrives when your sense of self is no longer built from their agreement. This does not mean passivity. It means selectivity. There are moments worth engaging. There are principles worth upholding. But the motivation is different. You act because it reflects your character, not because it guarantees you will be seen as right. Winning over others often inflames the ego. Guarding your inner calm refines it. When you compete, your focus narrows to the opponent. When you remain centered, your focus returns to your own conduct. The energy once spent monitoring others becomes available for self-mastery, and that is a deeper achievement. The world encourages comparison. It rewards visibility. It praises dominance. But none of these guarantee tranquility. You can stand at the top of a hierarchy and still feel unsettled. You can silence critics and still be disturbed by the next voice that rises. Stoic steadiness is not concerned with climbing above others. It is concerned with not being pulled below yourself. There is something profoundly liberating in stepping out of invisible competitions, in realizing that you are not obligated to participate in every rivalry presented to you. You begin to conserve energy, to move more deliberately, to let certain provocations pass without response, and gradually you notice space opening inside you. Conversations become lighter because they are no longer battlegrounds. Disagreements become exchanges rather than threats. You listen more carefully because you are not preparing counterattacks. You walk away when needed without the bitterness of unfinished conquest. Freedom of mind does not shout. It feels like quiet air after a long storm, like setting down a weight you did not realize you had been carrying. You do not need to defeat anyone to stand upright. You only need to remain aligned with your own reason, your own values, your own measure of integrity. And when you no longer chase victory over others, something unexpected happens. The path ahead becomes less crowded. Fewer arguments follow you. Fewer grudges cling to your steps. You walk forward not as someone escaping a fight, but as someone who no longer requires one. The road stretches ahead, calm and unhurried, lit by a soft horizon that asks for nothing but your steady presence as you continue on. In the end, nothing outside has truly changed. People still misunderstand. Voices still rise. Expectations still dissolve without warning. The world continues in its uneven rhythm. But something within you has grown quieter, not colder, not detached from life, simply quieter. You begin to notice the space between an event and your reaction, a narrow space, almost invisible, yet wide enough to choose. You feel the sting of words. You feel the tightening in your chest. You feel the familiar pull of wanting to defend, to explain, to correct. And then you wait, not because you are weak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer need the noise to prove your presence. There was a time when every disagreement felt like a threat. Every silence felt like rejection. Every criticism felt like exposure. Now they feel different. They pass through you. They touch you, but they do not define you. You still care. You still love. You still hope. But your balance does not depend on how others respond. This is not indifference. It is proportion. You understand that people act from where they stand, from their history, from their fears, from their limits, and you no longer take their limits as a measure of your value. There is a quiet dignity in that. You begin to see that strength was never loud. It was never the sharp reply, never the perfect argument, never the final word. Strength was the steady breath, the measured tone, the decision to remain aligned with yourself. There were moments when you wanted to win, to be seen as right, to secure your place above misunderstanding. Now you see that peace requires no audience. It exists even when no one notices. There is a certain freedom in not needing to correct every false image of you, in allowing others to hold incomplete pictures. In walking away without the urge to chase approval, the mind becomes lighter when it no longer carries the burden of managing other minds. You begin to move differently, slower, more deliberate, less reactive. You listen more. You speak with intention. You withdraw when the exchange no longer serves clarity, not out of pride, not out of fear, but out of understanding. You realize that the only territory ever truly yours was your inner posture, your judgment, your response. Everything else was weather. Storms still come. They always will. But you are no longer trying to command the sky. You stand where you are, feet steady, breath even. You allow the storm to move through, and when it passes, you are still there. Perhaps that is what this path has always been about. Not escaping pain, not conquering others, not building walls against emotion, but becoming someone who can remain present in the middle of it all. Someone who does not collapse at discomfort, who does not inflate with praise, who does not shrink under judgment. There is a calm that does not depend on circumstance, a center that does not shift with opinion. It is quiet. It asks for nothing. It proves nothing. It simply remains. And in that remaining, you begin to sense a different kind of strength. Not the strength that resists, but the strength that endures without hardening. Not the strength that dominates, but the strength that stands when the day ends and the room is silent. And no one is watching. You feel it most clearly, a stillness that was not there before, a steadiness that does not strain. The world continues to turn. Voices continue to rise and fall, but inside, something no longer trembles. And perhaps that is enough. In the end, you walk on, and nothing inside you needs to win.